And you should be good to go.
All right. I'm recording, so Michael, you're good to go whenever.
Cool. Is everybody in?
Everyone that is, yes, there's no one waiting currently, so we'll just keep letting people in as they show up.
Okay. Awesome.
There's Andrea. All right, now
Nice. Very cool. Does anybody else from the board want to do an intro this time, or do you want me to do the intro, or what should we?
I'm happy to do it. My camera just doesn't work, so I'll just be.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, cool.
What would you like me to, Michael, or you just want to go for it?
I'll just go for it. Whatever works. Well, anybody. Anyway. Welcome, everybody, to the Choice City Cucina. My name is Michael Coleman. I am on the board of directors of the Mountain Avenue Market, which is a cooperative organic food market located in downtown Fort Collins. We've been here for just under 50 years. It is a really wonderful store that supports local vendors, Colorado vendors, Fort Collins vendors, as many local things as we have. We really try to shorten our food chain. Recycle as much material as we possibly can in the store. That goes from everything from cardboard to coffee grounds to old vegetables that have sort of reached the end of their life and stuff like that. I'm extremely proud to be on that board, and as an outreach mechanism to our member owners. We are member owner owned. We started doing this cooking class earlier this year. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be educational. It's supposed to highlight all of the really wonderful products that we have at the Mountain Avenue Market. So if you RSVP'd and you received the link, everything on that recipe list you can find at the Mountain Avenue Market, so you can make this recipe at home. It's got step-by-step instructions on how to sort of do everything. But we are going to show you how to do that live tonight. So with that, I guess we will technically start the show right now. Welcome everybody to the second episode of Choice City Cucina. We're going to start that again. Welcome everybody to the second episode of the Choice City Cucina. I am Michael Coleman, your host, and I would like to welcome all the way from St. Louis, brand new to Fort Collins.
Absolutely.
My mom. So welcome, Mom.
Thank you, sweetheart. It's so good to be here. Thank you for asking me to join in this really fun thing.
Absolutely. Well, and it stopped raining and it's not freezing outside, so it officially feels like May. So we're going to make something that hopefully is sort of springy, kind of brunchy. I wanted to sort of do this episode before Mother's Day because it would have made a great Mother's Day dinner. As a matter of fact, we had it for Mother's Day dinner.
We did.
Trial running this recipe for everybody, but we didn't get it in time for Mother's Day. So you're getting it after Mother's Day. You can make it next Mother's Day.
That's right.
And it's actually a combination of two of our favorite recipes. One of them is one of my mom's favorites.
Yes, which is salmon with a lemon aioli.
It is absolutely fantastic. And mine is a creamy polenta with garlicky greens, where you save the sort of, we're going to use chard today. We're actually going to use chard and spinach, but we save the chard stems to give it kind of a crunchy little bite. So it's a great recipe. It's kind of luxurious. It's got creamy polenta, it's got the butter fat, or we're using vegan butter. It's got the greens, which are healthy for you. It's got some salmon, it's protein, some citrus. It's really great. It's great for any occasion. So without further ado, I think we're going to sort of get into making
We
this,
are.
aren't we?
We are. Let's get going.
Cool. So let's do a quick rundown of what we've done before we get started here. So we've taken the salmon out of our little frozen packets. We got this salmon that's sort of pole caught. It's wild. So we took it out of its little frozen packets. We dried it a little bit. We're going to do an extra step to it that we're going to show you later, but it is dried off. We're also going to do a tofu with this that you can use as a salmon substitute for the vegans cooking at home. You can have a tofu option with this because we are using the vegan butter with the polenta, so it would fit with that diet. And what else did we do? We washed the greens.
We did wash the greens, and
we've gotten the stock boiling on the stove.
Yes.
And we said wash the greens, right?
Wash the greens? Yes.
We did that.
Yes, we did.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let me see here. So what is the first thing that we are going to do? Well, actually, you had a little story you wanted to talk about.
I did.
Why this recipe speaks to you. So
right.
Why is that?
Well, there are so many people, and, I was probably one of them long ago, that were afraid of large leafy green vegetables. For whatever reason, because they're, I never grew up with them. I mean, grandma made salads with iceberg lettuce. I didn't have access to these leafy greens, and they're just wonderful. And I don't want anybody to be afraid of a stem that's this big, just because it's bigger than, baby spinach that you get in a bag.
And it cooks down to that.
And it cooks down the same way. And so that was important, but also fish, because fish preparation scares a lot of people. And it shouldn't, but it does. But this recipe is really foolproof, really easy. And so we wanted to present something that is very tasty, but uses ingredients that maybe some people might feel uncomfortable with. And
Yeah.
so this is a fun thing.
And salmon's an easy fish to cook. I mean, it tastes good even if you sort of overcook it.
Yes.
We're going to use a super secret, incredibly lazy cooking technique in
That's
order to
right.
bring this to you tonight.
That's right.
So I think without further ado, I had a catchy line I was going to say about
let's hear it.
the greens and the fish.
Yeah.
I was going to say you got to take the scary out and put the tasty in.
Want, want.
Yeah, didn't quite work. We missed the moment.
Yeah, excellent.
So let's get started.
That's very good.
Let's get
Two
started.
thumbs up.
So
Okay.
like we said, we've got some vegetable stock boiling on the stove. So we're actually going to turn this up to a nice rolling boil.
And we did this in advance because it just will, it takes about
Whoa!
25 minutes for this
Work the
polenta
baby.
to cook. So, okay.
So there you go. So this is really a two-person job, or at least we're going to make it a two-person job here. So let's get a close-up here on the stove. Now the thing with polenta, yeah. Well, no, you're on the wrong one.
Okay.
No, it's in your kitchen. You don't know.
That's right. This is not my.
Okay,
kitchen.
so
That's
we're-
exactly right.
So the polenta is so the stock is on a rolling boil. We forgot to season.
Oh,
Remember
yeah.
this? We
Oh,
forgot
yeah.
to
We did
season.
this last time.
We did
forgot
this
to
last time,
season.
and the damn polenta tasted like
Yeah,
nothing.
yeah.
So we're gonna season this
No,
time.
no, no.
What?
Remember, not too much.
It's fine.
Oh.
Now, the first time we did this, I was so cocky and with doing this, I said, "Oh, you got to salt the water. You got to salt the water." Well, polenta, unlike pasta, absorbs every last bit of
Yeah.
salt that you put into it. You don't discard anything. So don't over salt your water when making polenta.
And all of this liquid will no longer be as soon as this polenta is cooked. It will all be just a wonderful creamy polenta.
So for those of you who don't know what polenta is, it is basically grits that is more finely ground. So you sort of get a more creamy texture.
Well, let's talk
Corn.
about how long you're stirring this for.
Oh, right. So what we're going to do, so you have to stir constantly with this. Your arms have to be in shape. Your shoulders have to be in shape because you are going to stir constantly. And once it is all in there, you're going to continue to stir for another 5 minutes.
Yeah.
In total, we're going to be cooking this for 30 minutes, including the 5 minutes we're going to stir after it's all in there, stirring every 5 minutes. So we're going to be setting a timer throughout the show to sort of guide us from step to step to make sure that we're turning, stirring this polenta all the time.
And since the last time we made this, I could not remember how many times we had set the timer. I decided to give myself a little cheat sheet that Jamie's going to show you. I made little strips, and every time, so we're going to do this for 5 times, and every time the 5 minutes goes off, I'm going to rip one of those up so that I will know that how many times we have left here to do this. So
Any helpful hint that will get you to delicious food, you take advantage of it in your kitchen. So
absolutely,
we're going to set a timer for 5 minutes. And
we're going to,
thank God today wasn't an arms day.
So polenta, I mean, who would think that you could take this hard grain and someone said, you know what, I think I'm going to add some liquid to it and stir the heck out of it, and it's going to end up being delicious. But I must tell you that my first introduction to polenta was not a good one. Now, both sets of my grandparents were born in and around Palermo. So I am Foursquare Italian, but only my grandma Vita Scalizzi, who was my mom's mom, not Italian at all, was alive by the time I was born. So grandma did not speak English, but I think she understood it. She had 7 children. I know they spoke Italian in the home, but they also spoke English. So I know she understood English, but she didn't speak it or chose not to. So if you wanted to learn anything from grandma cooking, you had to do it just by observing what she was doing. So grandma made many wonderful things, but I did not like the polenta. She made it almost like in a pan that would, you know, the best description I can have is it was like cornbread, except it was very dense and it was oily. And whenever it was offered, I turned my nose up at it. I had tasted it once and said, nope, not interested, turned my nose up at it. And that was the end of it for me for polenta. Fast forward many decades, and my sister, my middle sister, told me that she made this great dish of polenta and short ribs. And I thought to myself, why would you do that? But it was because it was this type of polenta. It wasn't the polenta that grandma made when I was a kid. So I said, that's very nice. And then my nieces started making polenta. Our daughter makes polenta. Michael makes polenta. Still, never made polenta. So I said, I guess we were out to dinner once, and I said, there's this wonderful shrimp recipe, and it was on a bed of polenta, and I said, let's go, let's have it. Everyone's making it, I'm gonna try it. So I came late to the game of liking polenta, but still I had never made it until 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago, I guess, when we tried this out. I said, oh my gosh, this is so easy. So now it will be in my repertoire. So long story short, it is never too late. Number one, to change your mind about food. And number two, to actually make it. So don't be afraid of failing at something that you've never done.
Just keep stirring.
Just keep stirring.
Don't be
Yeah, so
afraid to
whatever you're
phone a
doing,
friend.
just keep.
Phoning a friend stuff. We still have 2 minutes to go. It's outrageous.
He's just kind of, and
Outrageous.
it's already thickening up a little bit, which is wonderful. You can, I don't know if you can get a shot of it, but it's already thickening up. And it's going to be, it's all of that. By the time the fifth one comes around, it'll be much harder to do this whisking.
Indeed.
But it is very good stuff.
We
But
also want to say, you can make polenta with chicken stock, you can make it with vegetable stock, you can make it with water. It sort of just depends on what kind of flavor you're going for. You can make it even with shrimp stock. If you're doing like a New Orleans style shrimp and grits, you probably want to make it with like a shellfish stock.
Yeah.
So it's a recipe that takes very, very well to seasoning it with whatever it is that you want to season with, because it doesn't inherently have a whole bunch of flavor on its own. So
and
it's
like,
really good.
you know, in the same vein, that's a lot with tofu. It doesn't have taste on its own, but whatever you put it with, it absorbs that taste. And polenta, yeah, on its own is not going to be that good, as my childhood memories took me. So I get it. But
45 seconds.
45 seconds.
Keep talking.
Can he do it, folks? Can he keep going with this?
Woo! Boy, this is really something. Here, make yourself.
Okay.
Try to see.
Okay, I will. Yeah.
All right.
There you go. All right.
So we're almost finished. So we're almost finished with the first round of polenta. So it's been 5 minutes. We are going to turn this down. I've already turned it down to simmer. We're going to turn it down to medium low to low, or solidly just in the low category on your stove, whatever that may be. And we're going to cover it with a lid. And every 5 minutes, we're going to come back to it and just give it a good stir. Now, because this is a kind of like a pasta dish, it will tend to stick a little bit to the bottom of the pan. So
That's
you
why
really just
a
want to
whisk
get.
is a good thing.
That's why we're actually using a wire whisk. I've got a plastic whisk that I use for sort of, different sort of pot, but for this one, you want the wire whisk. So we're going to put the lid back on.
So we're turning it down, putting the lid on, setting the timer for 5 minutes.
5 minutes, which we did not do. There we go. Okay, and now we're going to meet you back up front, and we're going to talk about greens. Now, this is
Greens. Don't be afraid of your greens. Your mother would told you when you were little to eat your greens, and maybe some of you do and some of you don't, but they're very good things to eat.
Here they are.
And
Look at
this
these things.
is one of my
There you
favorite.
go.
Rainbow chard. I mean, look at these stems. How beautiful has nature presented us with these beautiful stems and this lovely chard. So don't be afraid of this. I mean, you could almost wear it like a hat. It's very large, but don't be afraid of it.
Indeed. So there's 2 ways to strip chard. You can do it my mother's way, which is quicker and efficient and not at all pretty, or you can do it with a knife and run it alongside. So Mom, why don't you try your brutal way?
The brutal way. This is probably a little,
There you go.
this
Pick
might
your
be a little,
poison.
okay.
There you go.
So you just kind of go like this and strip it down, and there you go.
You
And
can
you're
do that.
left- And here you're left with this beautiful ribbon and this is the important part, because a lot of nutrients are in this, and this is going to give us texture for an otherwise really soft dish.
Indeed.
So we want to have
It's going to be
this.
great crunch. So make
Yeah.
sure that you save that. The other way to do this is just take your knife for those bougie amongst us, bougie cooks. Is just to run your knife along the side, and you sort of get the same thing.
Now,
And you also just come up with these
Yeah.
great little.
and I'm going to stack
Lots of
these,
jar.
kind of like little pieces of paper.
We are
We're
going to
gonna
stack them. We're going to roll them up later. We are in Colorado.
Yeah. So when you
Roll up them
also,
leafy greens, Ma.
when you also have this wonderful, colorful, these stems, because we've got like a kind of a peach one and red and yellow. When these are in your dish, they also make it's very pretty because
It is.
it's very colorful as well.
Absolutely.
So rainbow chard, but
Color.
you can use any kind of chard.
Color, taste, texture. So you need that in every dish. So now that you've got all this great chard, you just sort of roll it up like a big rice wrap that you would get like at a, at like some Asian restaurant or something. And you just run your knife through it, and it's
Look
basically
at this.
just like charred
beautiful?
sushi, so to speak. And it
Yeah.
gives you these great little
Yeah.
long ribbons of chard that are basically going to cook down to almost absolutely nothing. So we're just gonna put this in a bowl. So wait just a minute for us.
Yeah, this is, Michael he likes the ribbons, you can cut these. If you don't like ribbons, you can cut these. When you are cooking, you can do, my rule is cook's rule. So whatever you decide to do, that's the rule of the day.
That is that is the rule of the day.
Yeah.
Do not cross the cook. So now with the stems, super easy. Just run your knife right through them. Cut them into sort of like if you were slicing celery. It's about the size piece that you want, something like that.
Yeah.
Not too big, not something that's going to be so small and so thin that it's also going to just sort of get soft too quickly.
Yeah.
Because this is going to be in the pan for 5, 6, 7 minutes by the time it's all said and done, and you still want it to have some crunch by the end of it. You sort of want to cook out the rawness of it, soften it a bit, but other than that, basically just
You want that crunch,
keep
you
its
need that
crunch.
crunch.
And its color too, because
Yeah,
as
look how
it cooks,
beautiful it is.
as it cooks, it will lose its color.
Yeah.
So we're gonna get a smaller plate, and we're gonna grab our little. These things are great too, particularly if you're cutting up, mincing a bunch of stuff, chopping a bunch of stuff on your cutting board. Really just sort of puts it away all really nicely. And now normally I would use 2 bunches of chard for this dish, but tonight I had this. I planted spinach last fall, thinking, oh, maybe I'll get some spinach before it gets cold. And it was a long winter, wasn't it? And this poor spinach was exposed. It was out absolutely in the elements. I said, there's no way this stuff is going to grow. And this spring, I'll be damned if it didn't just start growing up. And this stuff is beyond beautiful.
It is. It's very curly. It's very dense. It's quite textured. this spinach.
Huge and leafy and crinkly and just absolutely gorgeous. It's a mess right now.
This is not your baby spinach that you get in the bags.
No, it is
From
not.
Delmont,
It is not.
From the grocery bags.
So we're gonna have a little bit of fun,
Chop it.
and
more-
we're just
more
gonna
chopping.
pull and do whatever, and we're gonna stick it on here. The stuff that we can't fit in here, we'll put back in the bag. And remember that spinach actually will cook down more than chard will, although spinach that is this big
This is
and
pretty,
this
this is
robust
hardy, this is hardy spinach.
will take a bit longer to cook down than sort of the baby spinach that you get like in the bags and stuff like
But
that.
I'll tell you, any spinach that's willing to come up under 22 inches of snow deserves to have its day.
The champion
This is what
spinach,
it is.
if I've ever heard it. So, up,
Okay,
up, we gotta stir the chard. So,
this is our chard stirring.
no,
Oh, I'm sorry.
polenta.
Polenta
stirring,
Yes,
there we
all right, so I can feel it at the bottom kind of sticking, so I'm really kind of hugging the sides and trying to get those little bits that are on the bottom up.
Oh,
So,
that's good. Good thing we just cleaned the floor.
all right, this is a good stir here.
10-second rule on the Coleman household.
That's right. Okay, now we're back to. Now we're back to another 5 minutes, and one of these goes away.
All
All
right.
right, so timer, 5 minutes. All right,
So there we go.
here we go.
So charge done. Polenta is going. It is now time to, well, we were going to drain tofu, but we actually already know it's not time for tofu. It's time for garlic.
Time for the
So-
garlic. This is a good garlic lesson he's gonna teach you, because garlic is another thing that kind of freaks people out, because it's a very sticky thing, garlic. It's very sticky.
It is very sticky.
Yeah.
And it's covered with the skin that gets that sticks to the oils that are in garlic. So garlic's a really great thing because of the oils that are in it. But if you don't treat it right, sort of at the outset, the oils will stick to the skin, and then you'll just have sort of a nightmare in the kitchen. So I've got 4 cloves of garlic here. I might go for a 5th. I don't know, but we'll see. So
Again,
who
these
doesn't
are
like
called
garlic?
garlicky greens.
garlicky
Everyone,
greens
yes.
for a reason. So you want enough garlic to go with your greens. So in order to get the skin off, it's really just super simple. There's a couple ways you can do it. You can really just twist the clove like this. And twisting the clove a lot of times will be enough to sort of remove the skin from it. But if you don't feel like sort of, gnashing on your hands and stuff, you just sort of pop it, not smash it, just pop it. And the skin will come off, the clove will stay intact. Maybe it'll get a little bit busted, but for the most part, it won't be like absolutely smashing it. And please go for local and organic garlic. There's so much garlic out there that gets just blasted with chemicals and treated with chemicals. Anything that's a root plant like this that gets hit with tons of chemicals, just awful for you.
This is very thin skin, so.
Very thin skin.
There's nothing really to protect
No.
the meat from that garlic.
So if you're making an enormous batch of chili for a bunch of people, go ahead and throw the garlic in with these little bitty nubs right here. Since we're just making a little dish, cut off the nubs. Nobody wants the nubs.
No one
If
wants to
you,
know.
if you tuned in for the first episode, you know that I don't like the nubs. So we're just gonna put
There,
those away.
and you might find like there was in one of these pieces, there was a little spot. You may have gotten it in the nub.
I might
So,
have,
yeah.
might have been the nub.
Yeah,
Maybe
may
that
could
would've
have
been
been
it.
it, yeah.
So what we're gonna do now, you can go ahead and smash it. So, like I said, garlic is one of these things where the sort of the essence lies within, right? All the good health benefits of garlic are from the oils in the garlic. And in order to release those oils, you gotta bust it up. So that's what we're gonna do now. Now we're
This
gonna
is
go
what
in.
smells good too, because now you can really
Indeed.
smell the true garlic
Indeed.
smell, and it's just
So we're just gonna run
wonderful
through
thing garlic is.
with proper chopping technique here, which I never actually learned, and I have almost sliced my fingers off a
Put
million
your
different
put your
times.
things like your fingers like this, your knife can't.
What is it? 1 in front, 2 in back? and
No,
then
I
one
always put the whole thing so that your knife is running alongside of it instead
Ah,
of
I
making
see.
it, but you're never gonna see a chef do that, when they're chopping these things like a million miles a minute. They're just, well, they're professionals.
They are pros.
We're
We
not. That's
certainly
not
are
us.
not here.
No, we are not.
We're in a tiny kitchen in Old Town. We're not anything
We're
like
in
that.
the Choice City Cucina.
So that's what we're calling it. Home's cook.
That's
or
right.
Home cooked. So
Home
that's
cooks.
where we are. So that looks like a good amount of garlic. It doesn't look like a ton, but once everything cooks down to nothing, this is gonna be more than enough. So
Yeah.
we're gonna go ahead and set this aside.
Okay. Oh, stuff smells good though.
It does,
It does.
doesn't it? Sort of
Yes.
that lingering smell of
Yeah.
garlic,
Yes.
sweet smell of success. So we've got about another minute and a half until we stir our polenta.
Yes, it's just kind of cooking away. It's a nice thing that other than the first, it doesn't require attention because you have to go back every 5 minutes, but other than the first 5 minutes when you're constantly stirring, it's just every 5 minutes you give it a whirl.
Leave it alone,
Leave it
set a
alone, let it
timer,
do
and give it
its
a
thing.
stir.
Yeah.
So
Gotta get soft.
indeed, so we want to talk about tofu a little bit.
We want to talk about tofu because I was asking Michael, since I am not a tofu eater myself. I mean, I've had tofu in the past, but I really didn't know the difference between a firm tofu and a silken tofu. And so Michael's going to explain it to us. So
And I don't eat tofu all that much either, but I've learned enough about it cooking for my lovely wife, who is going to a 100% plant-based diet. And what I found about tofu, or at least what she tells me she likes about tofu, is if you're cooking tofu to act like a protein, I think you want to use firm to extra firm tofu because you can drain it out a little bit more. It's got more of a meaty texture to it. If you're making something like a sauce or something that you want to, it's like a scrambled egg or something like that, go ahead and use the silken tofu because that'll blend up a lot smoother and it won't have some of those rough textural elements to it and stuff like that.
5 minute mark.
Hold that
Hold
minute.
that thought.
We're
Okay.
stirring polenta.
Stirring
Back
polenta
over to the
again.
stove to see what it looks like this time.
It is really, I'm not sure. It is really getting thick here.
Yeah, there you go. Do you think we need some more water? Or
I
we'll
don't
see?
know. This was 4 cups of liquid to 1 cup of polenta.
So an
Right.
entire bottle of vegetable stock or chicken stock, it's really easy to measure out. That's all
Maybe
you
a little
need.
more, sweetie, I don't know.
Think so?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we've got 4 more things to go here.
4
so
more things to
I'm
go.
not sure,
All right.
but let's just see. Let's let it go for this round, and then if we need some more, we'll put it in.
Well, we'll
See,
be
you
prepared to
know?
boogie if we boogie.
Cooking is always a fun project, and you never know what you're gonna come up against. So we're gonna set this again for 5 minutes, and then we may add some more liquid next time. So
Recipes don't always work, even ones that you've made 50
Oh,
different
no.
times at home.
No.
So be
I know.
prepared to adjust, be
Yeah.
prepared to add more water, add more salt, do whatever. It doesn't matter. It just
Yes.
cooks the way that you want. It's all about the journey. So
but
speaking
I
about the journey,
I
let's
do
go
have
back
to.
to the turkey.
Okay, I do have to tell you something though, your father, I cook things, not by recipe, very often at all. And he always said, make it just like you made it last time.
Doesn't work that.
Doesn't work that way. No, you can't because you're not using a recipe. But I also tell my kids, if you can read, you can cook.
Indeed.
So take that to heart. So those of you who think you can't cook, if you can read, you can cook.
Yeah,
Oh,
indeed.
Thank you.
So it's it's sort of like, and cooking is more like Jimi Hendrix playing the guitar, right? He picked it up, he saw it, it made sense to him. Whereas a classical pianist or something like that is a baker. It's a very different style of cooking. So one has to be absolutely precise. The other, you can just sort of be free form, make it up as you go. That's why I love cooking, because I just don't like the structural elements to it and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
No.
anyway, so that's a lesson.
No, it is a lesson. And I think that, when you taste things, and to me, when I'm putting a recipe together, I'll say, you know what, I think this will taste good in here. And it may not, I have no idea, but you can't be afraid to try because, it's the journey.
Indeed.
And next time you won't do that, so.
Very true. So now we're gonna smash some tofu.
We are.
To
Okay.
get this
Let's
going.
look
So what
at
we did is we drained it.
And
So
this
we-
is the firm tofu.
This is extra firm, actually.
Extra
firm, and it's this handy stuff that comes in 2 little packets, 8 ounces each. So each of these is about a 4-ounce serving, which I think is a serving size.
Yeah.
So for those of you calorie counters out there, which I've recently started doing because I was eating a half jar of peanut butter a day. You just can't do that if you're protein 40, apparently. So
You can,
you can.
but you may not
can.
want
It's
to.
probably not a good idea. The cholesterol starts going up.
That's right.
Anyway, so we drained it, and it's been sitting on a paper towel, which will help extract some of that moisture, but it doesn't get all of it out. So tofu, I've found, just like proteins, fish, beef, turkey, whatever you want, the drier they are, the better it will sort of get a nice texture on it while you're cooking it. Sort of that
Yeah.
cooked edge that makes sort of, protein so enticing. So what we're gonna do with this here cast iron pan is put it on top of this for about 5 minutes.
We're gonna cover it, so we're not.
And we're gonna cover it. We're not gonna smash it. We're just gonna cover it. And we're gonna let it go for about 5 minutes. So roughly for about the time of a polenta stirring
Yeah.
period. And then we're gonna take it off. So we're just gonna set it on, make sure that it is centered on there, and then you just sort of put it aside. This
Yeah.
is what we're gonna do.
So things that, foods that have a lot of liquid in them when they're cooking, it can cause them almost to steam, and that's not what you want to do. You're trying to roast something, you don't want it steaming, you want it roasting, so.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed.
So what does this mean? I know what this means. This is going to be another creation.
So this is an important thing. So we're actually going to bake the salmon. When we bake the salmon, we're just going to season it with olive oil, salt, and pepper, sort of very simply because we want to show you what fish looks like when it's finished. Typically, when I would make salmon, I would put a marinade over the top of it and sort of let that keep some of the moisture in. But that's a little bit more of an advanced technique. It's not advanced, but it's a little bit more of an advanced technique because you're cooking blind. You can't really see the fish. So for the purposes of this exercise, we want you to be able to see the fish when it's cooked, what it looks like when it's finished without anything on top of it. However, what we're going to do is we're going to cover the tofu with the marinade. So the tofu is going to sort of cook in a marinade because so all that moisture that we just took out of it, we want to put a little bit of it back in there when it's baking in the oven because we don't want it to dry out too much. So
when do you think we're going to put the salmon on? Because of the time limit, and we're down to 3 of these things, and soon we're down to 2.
don't worry
So,
about that.
okay, so he's got it. He's got the timetable.
There's
here.
Q&As in here too and everything else like that. It's your
Okay.
first show. You'll get it. You'll get
It
it.
may be my last.
Yeah, it
I
may
need
be.
some likes.
It may be. Yeah. So what we're gonna do, I use, and by the way, this is something that you can use for salad dressing. I mean, this
This is a very good salad.
yeah, it is. It is a
Really
very
good.
good salad
Really
dressing.
good.
So if I was making salad dressing with this, I might add something like ginger or a bit of honey or like a balsamic vinegar. But this time we're going to use very light, very fresh, very bright acids, along with some garlic, some oils, and some mustard as an
I
emulsifier.
love mustard as an emulsifier because it is, oh
Oh,
my goodness.
Oh,
All right.
back to the stove.
Taking another one. And whoops,
Oh
I'm
my
sorry. They're
gosh.
falling all over the
Oh my
place.
gosh.
Okay.
This is how you know this is happening in real time.
Okay, so now we're stirring, and it's really kind of coming away from the bottom of the pan. So you know what I'm gonna do?
A little
I'm just
more.
gonna give it a little water, and then I think
All right, let's give it
Yeah.
a little water.
because we need it to be finished,
It's not
and that
almost looks like too
corn,
much.
yeah, I think we're gonna be good. I think we're gonna be good.
And really, when you're doing this, particularly when you're working with, we were doing this, don't be afraid about messing up with, this is a stainless steel pan. Feel free to just sort of be as aggressive with it as you can. You don't want this stuff to burn on there because it's, one, it won't make the dish taste good. 2, it's just a nightmare to clean your pot with. But because we're covering with the lid and some of that moisture is staying in, it will stay a little bit easier. So feel free to really get in there and
Yeah,
grind it
and
around.
these are
and get that
great to
stuff
kind of
off.
get around the corner. Okay, so another 5 minutes.
Another 5 minutes. And while we're doing this 5 minutes, we're gonna make this marinade and we're gonna show you how this comes together. Apologies, this is not gonna come as a shock to you, given the speech that we just gave about making it up as you go. But I don't really have a recipe for this marinade here either. So
Yeah.
we're just going to
So-
make it up as we go.
And this is the important part, because once you've done it, you can kind of follow the basic thing, because you know that the basis for this is oil. And once you get past the oil and the other elements, the garlic and the lemon, you can do whatever you want. You want to put, anything in there. If you want it to be a little, zesty, orange even, or he's going the garlic. wrap
Limes
here.
work
You
as
can
well.
Sure, anything that you want to do, and that's the fun of it. And you're not making a ton, so if you make it and it's not very good, you don't, nobody's making you do this
Don't
again.
cry over spilled salad dressing.
That's exactly right.
I don't know who said that.
No
Somebody
one,
should.
no one ever has said
Somebody
that.
should. Just
Okay.
making it up as we go along.
That's exactly right, and that's
Indeed.
okay, that's okay.
Indeed.
So what do you have here? You have oil, you have,
I have two kind of
white,
oils.
White vinegar?
I have two kind of oils. I have grapeseed oil, which I particularly like when I'm doing dressings like this because grapeseed oil gives it a neutral flavor. Where olive oil can be a really peppery flavor and can sometimes overwhelm things. So I like using predominantly grapeseed oil just because you need oil, and then a little bit of olive oil for flavor. And then I've got a white wine vinegar, which I found really sort of puffs the mixture up and actually makes it kind of thick. I do like this to be a little bit thick because I like it when I'm baking, whether I'm doing a salmon or I'm doing the tofu, so that it stays on top instead of just
yeah.
rolling off
If
to the bottom.
it's on the bottom, it cannot season the
Right.
tofu nearly as efficiently
Right.
as if it stays on the top.
Right. I don't
So-
want it burning into the bottom of my pan. I want it sort of cooking with the fish or the tofu in
Right.
this case. So
Right.
so let's see. We're gonna move it around. Yeah, roll that
I'm gonna
lemon
roll
there.
this lemon,
There
and
you
I'm
go.
rolling it just
Roll
to
that one.
release its juices, which is always a good thing to do, and it smells really good.
Now, I am committing a major faux pas here, and I want to cop to that. Typically, you do not ever want to work with garlic on an open grain wood cutting board like this, because those oils that are so great and smelly and all the other stuff can get into those open grains and they just sort of never come out. And as much as I love the smell and the flavor of garlic, the essence of raw garlic on your tongue or 5 months later when you're cutting into a cantaloupe isn't the nicest thing to taste. So, so we're going to toss this away. So we've got a decent amount of garlic in there. That's really good. We're
And a
going to
very
get
soft lemon, which is good.
very soft lemon. We're going to get our mustard out. Now, you do want a fair amount of mustard because this is the emulsifier, and you're going to have a decent amount of oil.
Why don't you tell me what an emulsifier does?
It binds acid to fat. It's what makes things a whole rather than, so when you go to an Italian restaurant, you get an Italian dressing and it looks like there are chunky parts and liquidy parts. That is what they call a broken dressing. It's not combined, it's not mixed. When you get, what am I looking for here? Like a hummus has elements of this,
Sure.
where it's just super creamy and thick. That is an emulsified sort of a blend. So that is what we're going for. That's going to prevent the oil from running off and the solids from staying on top. We want it to be a firm, cohesive sort of a thing. So
And the mustard will add this thickness, which is what you need.
and some great flavor. And also this is stone ground mustard, so it'll give you a little bit of texture in there as well.
Yeah.
So we're going to put a little bit more. Might be overdoing it, but who knows?
It's okay. It's a good punch.
So let me show you.
Punch to
So typically when I do this, you're using about 1 part oil to 1 part acid. It's about a 1-to-1, and the rest of it is the sort of filler stuff. So let's go in. And when you're doing this, we're going to be using an immersion blender, which if you've never used an immersion blender before, is like the greatest, most useful thing in the world for blending soups, for making hummus, for making salad dressings. Whatever, for making any sort of a dip, it is really just the greatest thing in the world. Not that this is a dip. So that was grapeseed oil. This is your olive oil. So that looks good.
So
But the thing is that immersion blenders have little holes on the side of the thing, and you need to make sure that that those holes can get down below the top of the liquid, or nothing will blend together. I think it's gravity.
Yeah.
Something. I'm not exactly sure. Oh, we basically had none of that.
Yes. Well, the vinegar is going to be a little short, so the mustard is going to have to.
Well, we do have a rice wine vinegar, and really any sort of a white
Yeah.
vinegar will work. Typically, when I'm doing this one up, we're
Hold
stirring
that
again.
thought. We're stirring again, and one more thing is down the tube. So
Ooh, look at that lemon.
that is lovely.
Woo, that's pretty.
Oh, I think that water we added was very necessary, so that was a good thing to do. All right, now getting around in the corners here, which is really good, and it's just such a beautiful color. Yeah, so we've got one more, and then we can call this polenta.
Is that it?
Well,
It's
more
about
of stirring, and then we get to add the yummy butter.
There
so,
you go. All right,
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah,
Good.
don't forget to add the yummy
Good that
butter.
we're not there
So
yet.
5 more minutes. Okay. All right, there you go. All right,
Okay.
so if you can see, we have about,
So if you can
maybe
see
an
this,
inch or so.
the acids are on the bottom. That's the sort of
Yeah.
That's the sort of white
You can
stuff.
see
The
the
oils
line.
are on the top.
Sure.
I might add a little bit more lemon, and then we might add.
Yeah,
Oh, and I forgot. We need to season this with salt and pepper. too.
Yeah.
That's a must.
and the lemon will add that acidic punch that you didn't have the vinegar for. So
Indeed.
This is good.
Indeed.
Now, let's talk about this salt. So when I first moved here, Michael was talking to me about a salt that was a salty salt. And I truly didn't know that there were different saltinesses of salt. Whatever this salt is, and I'm not sure what this is a very salty
Some
salt.
unrefined sea salt.
Unrefined sea salt, there you go. Now, we have friends who had brought us back some salt from Cyprus, and that was really very, very good, but it was bigger chunks. This is pretty refined, but it is very salty, so.
It really does pack a punch. So, I was amazed recently when I was watching this documentary, and they said that the country of Japan, which is largely kind of a tiny island, produces 2,000 or 3,000 different kinds of salt. Just that one country. So imagine a whole universe of additional salts. There are salty salts and tasting salts and seasoning salts and all these different kinds of salt. So when you buy a salt, find one that you're comfortable using. Some of them are going to be more mild, some of them are going to have a stronger flavor. It's important, particularly with this one, that you just don't use too much of it because it can be, in fact, too much.
Right.
So I'm looking at this and I'm thinking it's a little
Thin.
thin. So I'm going to put a little bit more mustard in. And we're going to come back over here to the stove because I've got to plug in. I'm going to trade places with her.
Yes.
So we're going to plug in this immersion blender. This is what it is. Emerald Lagasse used to call it a boat motor. You can get gigantic ones, which look like an awful lot of fun to play with. This one is just sort of small. I've had it forever. They cost about $40 and they are just super, super easy to use and really great. So lemon, garlic, mustard, salt, pepper, olive oil, grapeseed oil, and I wanted to have more white wine vinegar in there, but I didn't get it. So you don't just want to go in here and start blasting full blast. You sort of want to pulse, 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 pulse. And then when it starts to come together, then you hit it with the full blast. So you sort of move it around and move it up and down and do that thing. So let's get in here. Get in there, babe. See what you can get. And you see the holes in that thing are down below the surface, so that's good. And we're pulse and pulse and pulse, pulse, pulse. And now we're just going to blend. And now you can really sort of see how puffy and thick and wonderful that thing has gotten. So it's not so thick that it won't budge, but it's thick enough that it's going to stay on top of that tofu and actually end up working really well. So we're going to come back. And as soon as I get my taster up here, come on up, Ma.
Excuse me.
Tell me what you think.
Okay.
Get yourself a little finger in that. See what you think.
Hey, Michael, can I ask a question?
That's
Yeah.
good. That's very good.
I don't apparently have any wet mustard, but I do have some mustard powder. Should I add a little? Should I stay away from that? What's your recommendation?
That is a really good question, Amber. I'm assuming that's Amber. I can't see you, but it sounds like Amber. You know, I don't know. Maybe is there a way that you could mix it with water to create mustard? Is that how you make mustard out of mustard powder? I'm not sure.
I know, right?
I'm
You
actually-
do- I've never done it.
I don't think you get the emulsion. I don't think you'd get the thickness
you
that
might.
you're looking for.
You might.
Although
Try it. Hey,
don't
you know
know.
what?
Cook
Try
roll.
it and see what happens. If nothing else, you'll get
You'll know.
mustard flavor in there. You don't know if it'll work, but this is what it's all about.
Yeah.
Next time you may come back and be like, well, that was a bad idea.
Yeah.
Or you
I
might say that worked perfectly.
That was the best thing ever.
Because that powder would do a really good job of absorbing some of that oil and sort of bringing that stuff together. So you never actually know. That could work, end up working out well.
Could be beautiful.
Okay.
All right, we're down to, our polenta is finished. It's our last.
Look at
timer.
that.
Look at that.
So
Okay.
the polenta's finished. So we're actually going to, let's see, man. Let's give that a taste.
Yeah,
Let's see
we
what
do
we've
need to
got
give
here.
it a taste.
Let's see what we've got. Need some salt.
Really?
It does. Taste that. Need some salt.
Mm. Well,
Needs a
your
little bit.
garlicky greens are gonna be pretty salty. so-
Well, or we could not salt it as much,
Yes.
just depending on. Okay, so we're gonna put a little salt in there. And just for the heck of it, we're just gonna do a little black pepper, season it up a little bit more.
All right, all right.
And now we are gonna do what everybody's been waiting for, I'm sure, which is we are gonna fold in, that's what they call it in the culinary world, they're gonna fold in some butter. Now, if you'll recall, we are using vegan butter for this. So
I'm gonna do this. This
We're
is
gonna do-
about 4 tablespoons of this butter.
indeed, so it's
Yeah.
not a small amount of butter, but it is polenta. And this is what it's all about. This is one of the reasons this is sort of a rich dish and something that you can make that is luxurious. but there are plenty of other really healthy elements to this dish that are gonna balance out the fact that you just threw about 800 calories of butter in it. So go ahead, let's keep going and just watch this, and it gets a beautiful sheen on it.
Yeah, it is beautiful, and the butter does help it. And it gives it another layer of flavor, which is what you want.
Indeed, and really, you know, I've made polenta with cow's butter. I've made polenta with this vegan butter. You really don't lose a single thing by switching it out. Again, just because polenta, you know, particularly if it's a salted butter. Now this is a salted vegan butter, and it is just really great. So look at how creamy that is. That just looks great. Could be a little creamy. Let's give it a taste. See what you get, Wow.
I'll have that for dinner.
Okay, perfect.
That was very good. We're gonna put the lid on. We're gonna call it a day.
Put the lid on.
We're gonna switch pans, and we are going to put.
Now hold on a second, better. Before you turn that off.
Okay.
Just because we need to show you this super secret thing we're doing with the salmon.
Super secret.
Super secret. So there's two things that we're doing. They're super secret. So like we were telling you with the tofu, where you want to get as much moisture out of it as possible, we have gone ahead and patted the salmon dry. Now this is a wild caught, whole caught salmon, so it is very lean to begin with. There's not a ton of fat in there, so it's going to cook very, very quickly. So this technique that we're going to show you actually works out perfectly, and it's great if you're short on time. But there is one thing you have to remember, and that is that the great chef Thomas Keller, most celebrated American chef in history, I saw him give a demonstration on this, and it's amazing. If you want the salmon to cook perfectly, you have to get the skin off the bottom. Well, if the skin has moisture in it, it's going to turn slimy and slick, and it's not going to come off the bottom. And that's not what you want, because you don't want to be messing around with it. So how do you get the moisture off? Well, here's how you do it. Let's get in close if we can, so we can take a look. So this looks like a dry piece of fish. However, when you scrape it down off the side of it, look at all that moisture that comes off. So we are going to just run our knife down this fillet a couple of times to get as much moisture out of this skin as humanly possible. Look at all that. So it doesn't seem like a ton, but it will affect the way that this fish skin crisps up at the bottom. There it is again. There's just a lot of moisture on there. So
you can see how much moisture is just from sitting on top of the parchment paper. There's a lot of moisture.
Absolutely. So we just want to avoid that as much as humanly possible. So we've done it to the other two. Right. Now we've done it to these. So now we're just going to season them very quickly.
This is a very easy preparation. Olive oil, salt and pepper.
The bounty of the sea, lends itself typically to very simple seasonings. Just a little salt, obviously, because it comes from salt water, so that's just sort of a natural flavor enhancer to it. Is great. And for a piece of fish like this is a Keta salmon.
Keta salmon. And they are fillets, and they do not. I didn't feel any bones as I was kind of massaging it. You want to feel that if there are any pin bones in there, that you take those out, because those aren't pleasant to come across when you're eating. But you can do that just by kind of massaging it to begin with and feeling to see, but I didn't feel any.
On the really thick farm raised stuff where it's about that thick in the middle, you're going to have tons of bones in there. On this stuff, which comes towards the bottom end of the fillet, it looks like this is stuff towards the bottom end of these fillets. You're not going to get those bones in it. So we're pretty clear and dry here. So now here again. Okay. Oh, by the way, we forgot to take the tofu off.
That's right.
So we're gonna unsmash.
Should be
the tofu.
nice and dry by now.
It should be.
It's been smashed.
So apologies to those of you who are vegans at home. This is our very small home kitchen here. So we're just going to be cooking this stuff together. Just to sort of show you how quickly everything can come together. So remember what I said, salmon, olive oil, salt, pepper, really simply. Now, typically, if I was doing salmon, I would cover it with a marinade just like this. And you can see how thick that marinade is.
This is what you're going for. And that's, It'll be, I would love to know the answer to that mustard question, because the reason that it's thick is, you know, in large part
Well,
because of
in
the
a minute.
emulsifying, but also because. of
Well,
the
in a
mustard.
minute here, Mom, when we open up to Q&As, we will turn the camera around and ask Amber that question.
Well,
See
there
how
you
it came
go.
out. So
Right.
Amber, we were about to put you on the spot.
Okay.
So here we go. So we just get it on all sides, nothing crazy, nothing too nuts. And here, at long last, is the super secret cooking technique. We are gonna throw this fish and this tofu into a cold oven
Cold oven.
that we are gonna set to 400 degrees at 15 minutes, and that is literally going to be it.
That's gonna cook it all.
That's gonna cook it all, top to bottom. It's gonna be absolutely perfect. The fish, you just wanna cook through. The tofu, you just wanna warm through. It's gonna do both of those things perfectly. So here we go. We're gonna go into the oven. Thank you, Ma.
And set it to 400. Now,
Great.
if you do find yourself having salmon that's a little thicker, you might want to cook it a little longer, but for this, you know, for this thickness, 15 minutes is just great.
Just perfect.
Yeah. So,
we're here. We've got 15 minutes to go.
and I'm gonna make,
Well, we're gonna do garlicky greens, but I think now we've got a little bit of time for Q&A. So I think we're gonna open it. Isn't that right?
yeah, we can. I also have to make the aioli for the salmon.
Oh, yes. Why don't
Yeah.
you go get that ready,
Okay.
Ma? And while she's getting that ready, let me just open it up to questions. Anybody out there in Zoom land have any questions about anything? Actually, before we take questions, let's ask Amber that question. Amber, how did it work with the powdered mustard into the marinade mix?
Well, I kind of guessed, and I put in what looked like somewhere around like quarter to a half a teaspoon,
Yeah.
blended it in with it, and it tastes good, but I would have tasted like without it. So there you go. I don't know. Maybe
You'll
if
know next time if you want to try it. As long as it tastes good, that's really all that matters. I mean, you know, and this is, you know, there is always more than one way to skin a cat, proverbially in the kitchen, of course. And you know, powdered mustard, I think, I don't know this for a fact, but I would think that if you just added water and vinegar and salt to powdered mustard, you would probably get mustard. I don't know the answer to that question, but I think that you're not far off from having made mustard right there in that marinade. Almost. But anybody have any questions? Anybody out there cooking or not cooking has any questions up to this point?
So I have a question. Cooking, and when you we put the olive oil, salt and pepper on the salmon and the tofu, you put some marinade on it as well before you put it in the oven?
No, I put the marinade on the tofu. What I had said earlier is that typically when I make salmon, like, it's not typically, sometimes when I make salmon, I will put the marinade over the top of the piece of salmon to have it cook with the fish, particularly really lean fish like this, because I think it sort of helps keep some of the moisture in. But for the purposes of this episode, I just wanted to show how 15 minutes can really cook a fish through. And so I really wanted just you all to be able to see the cooked fish with nothing on it. Just to sort of see, it's, you know, isn't an advanced technique. It's a little bit more advanced because if you do put the marinade on top of it, you are cooking a little bit blind.
Michael Patrick didn't have a question, but he said it all looks delicious.
Well, wait till you see when it's actually plated up. We'll hopefully be getting to that here in fairly short order. Anybody else out there? We apologize. We were going to sort of do a special bonus thing in this episode. We were going to make like a vegan-ase, which is something that the technique to make it is very similar to what we use to make that salad dressing. And we were going to make that because you could have put that on your fish at the end and stuff like that. But when we were trialing this recipe, we were sort of all over the place and we couldn't really get our act together. So we said, well, probably best to nix the vegan-ase. So apologies to those of you hoping that we were going to show you that. Although I do think that later on in the summer, we might do something where it's sort of like a dips and sauces episode and stuff and everything. So we might get around to sort of making vegan-ase stuff. So here's my mom
Okay.
back with an aioli.
So I just made a very simple, this is almost like a cheater's aioli. I had lemon juice, a juice of 1 lemon, I think a piece that you had because I like really a lot of lemon in it. Added a little bit of water. You can add some cream because you are using mayonnaise. And then marinade, salt and pepper, and it just makes a little aioli that we're going to drip over everything at the very end.
It's
So,
absolutely to die for.
It's
And it
really
goes
good.
really perfectly with this dish because you've got the creamy polenta, the garlicky greens, and the sauce really just brightens the whole thing just right on top. So it's really, really, really a nice touch there.
yeah.
So let's go ahead and get our Dutch oven warming for the greens. So it's gonna take, Dutch ovens are, well, you could use a saute pan if you want to. We're just cooking so many greens. I figure a Dutch oven is just a good way to sort of corral them all in one place. They're gonna cook down to almost nothing, like I said, but this will just sort of help keep everything in there for those first hectic few minutes where you dump a bag of greens in there about this big before it ends up cooking down to that. So it is gonna take just a few minutes for that to warm up before we get going here.
Yeah, and another good reason to use this as well is when you've got oil in here and you're adding things that have water in it, it spits at you. So it's nice to have it in kind of a deeper container so that
Indeed.
you're not, the spitting's not all over.
It'll help keep your stove a little bit cleaner as well, so that oil's just not, where you have to clean your stove every second Tuesday.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
So pardon us here. So we're gonna clean a little bit, unless anybody has any other questions
Yeah,
out there. We might just clean because it's a rule of your kitchen. I know it's a rule of my kitchen.
yeah.
That cooking while you clean is a very important thing to do. I can't remember the exact saying, but I think it was clean space, clear mind. Or
Yeah,
something
like,
like
well,
that.
I can't start cooking unless the kitchen's clean
Right.
because it's too distracting.
Well, it's
Cooking
the
is very,
the
it's
zen
creative,
and
but
the
it's
art-
also ordered.
the zen and the art of cooking. If you have a dirty kitchen,
Nah.
clean
wants
your
to cook it?
clean your kitchen,
Clean it,
right? Respect
it.
your food. That's what this show is all about.
Yeah,
So
that's exactly right. Well, I hope that in seeing how easy this recipe is with the fish, that if you are so inclined to want to kind of back off of it, that you don't, that you kind of take the plunge, and salmon's a good one to do it with. You can overcook salmon, that's for sure. But also on the other end, I mean, I'm a huge sushi fan, so if it's not, all the way through, that's good with me too. So I'm good. So this
Cool.
is
let's
wonderful.
check our heat right over there.
Okay.
And see what we're getting to.
So I think we are heating up nicely.
Okay.
Yeah. Remember all that wonderful garlic that Michael chopped earlier is going to go into this pan before these greens get in. We've got about 9 minutes on the fish and the tofu. So,
We're ahead of schedule.
we are.
This is so unlike all of our trial runs to be ahead of schedule.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry for the awkward silences. Wasn't how we planned it.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Okay, well, let's see.
But it's interesting with different types of salmon, and I think that this one doesn't have a lot of fat in it. But if you get like a Norwegian or a farm-based salmon, it does have seemingly a more of a fat content. Coho salmon that you would get out of Alaska is very red. It's quite beautiful, but really lean, just like this Kita salmon. It's slow. Hello. That was to make sure that I was still awake. So you can just figure on the type of salmon you're using as to how long you're going to cook it. This is pretty lean, so we're not going to cook it very long.
Yeah, and it doesn't take too much longer to, well, I guess maybe if you, typically for the farm raised stuff, you're getting those really thick salmon fillets that you see,
Yeah.
the ones that are like this.
Yeah.
They take about 20 minutes in a preheated 400-degree oven. This is going to take 15 minutes in a cold oven. So
No,
there's pretty drastic difference.
When I have made that, it's 25 minutes in a cold oven.
I'll believe it when I see it.
We're gonna have to try.
Right. Maybe next episode we'll do
Cook's
that.
rule. That's all
You
I'm
don't get bored enough by salmon by the end of this one. we're really gonna drive it home. in the
Yeah,
next
I'm
episode.
gonna move over here so Apple can attack these greens.
Okay, so we're gonna start with a little bit of oil, which is the universal starting point. I think there's a mess. Hold on. We're gonna take the little thing on there. So we're gonna add a little bit more oil, not a ton. Oh, that's perfect. That's too much. That's all right. So we're gonna put some oil. We're gonna enter the stem. So these stems are gonna cook for just a couple of minutes. And we're on medium heat, but we did get the pan nice and preheated, which is why you hear that great sizzle, which is what you do want when you're starting to sort of cook anything. You want to hear that great sizzle. There is a trick that normally I talk about where you get your hands a little bit wet and you toss droplets of water into the pan. If they go when they hit, then your pan's hot enough to cook. I didn't do that this time. Apologies for that. But we are going to season these chard stems a little bit. It's going to do a couple things. One is just going to give a nice base flavoring to the pot, to the stem. Second thing it's going to do is going to release a little bit of water from those stems. Because the next thing we're going to do is add the garlic in there. And the garlic, if we just put it on a really hot oil and really hot stems, it can burn. So when a little bit of water is released out of the stems, it'll sort of help protect them when it goes in. Just another 30 seconds on those. I think it's going to be good.
Those are beautiful. Look at the beautiful colors of those. That's that rainbow card. We have all of those gorgeous colors.
Indeed. It looks a little short. Like I said, normally I would have used 2 bunches of chard, so you'd have a lot more of these stems in there, but the spinach that I had on hand was just so incredible looking. I didn't want it to go to waste. So I ended up using that. We have a knife over there. So we are just going to scrape this garlic in there. There we go. That's the good stuff.
Now it starts smelling good.
Now it starts smelling good. This is when everybody sort of wakes up in the house and goes, somebody's cooking in the kitchen.
Somebody's cooking something good.
Cooks are cooking. Now I'm fairly active when I've got garlic and hot oil like this again, because burnt garlic is one of the most unpleasant tastes you could ever have. Properly cooked and sweated garlic, where those oils just released, is wonderful. You can see some of that stuff is starting to get a little brown. So what we're going to do, Mom, if you come over here, dump that bowl of greens in here. Now, when you add these bowl of greens, it's going to cool down the pan because the greens are cool. It's also going to release a ton of moisture.
You want this additional bag?
Not yet.
Okay.
So we're just going to start cooking this down. And what I always like to do is, again, I'm pretty active at the stove when I'm doing this. You don't have to be this active, but I do like, when that hot oil hits these leaves, it will start that cooking down process. So the quicker you can get that hot oil and those hot bits on these leaves on top, the faster it will start to cook down. So we're gonna go. Let's add a little bit more salt to this. A little bit of pepper. Not a lot, because you don't want pepper to be the overriding flavor. I did read a fascinating article on Bon Appetit that said, when did salt and pepper ever become a flavor combination? Because salt is a flavor enhancer, where pepper is spice. So if you want something to taste like more like itself, add salt. If you want something to taste like pepper, add pepper. So where the two became conflated, probably somewhere in the annals of colonialism, I would imagine, where pepper was a status symbol, so you wanted to add it to literally everything. So this is starting to cook down. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a little bit of spinach. I don't think we're going to add it all, but we're going to add a little bit. Again, because the spinach will cook down faster than the chard, so there's not really, so you don't want to add all the spinach at once, because, again, you really kind of just want to cook the rawness out of this. You don't want to cook the color out of it. That's really important, I think, particularly when you're dealing with greens, is that you can overcook greens, and then what you get is they actually end up turning brown, which isn't all that attractive for anybody. So you really just want them to sort of cook the rawness out of them and then get that really great bright green color. You're going to get that more from the spinach than you do from the chard. Just some of the chard leaves, like this one right here, actually do kind of have a brown hue, but from the spinach you can see that just that deep, deep, deep emerald green, which is kind of what you're going for. Turn the heat up a little bit, help this process around. We've got 2 minutes left. Wow, we may actually finish on time. Which is
Yeah,
the strangest thing ever.
That would be wonderful.
Wouldn't that be?
Yeah.
Everything would be hot at the look at that 1 minute. 1 minute.
1 minute.
So that is starting to cook
I
down.
just looked at the fish and it looks like it's cooking very nicely.
There we go. It's green. So we did lower the time on the fish. We did try 20 minutes, and it was, I think we tried 25 minutes the first time. It was way too long. And
Well, we had initially said 25 minutes and then we looked at it and said, ooh, yeah, that's not gonna work, and ended up at 20. And then the second time we did 15, but we forgot to set the timer. So, you know, kitchen mishaps, and, you know, and hungry people will be grateful that you put the effort forth to put something on a plate for them to eat.
you know, it may not be good, but at least we tried.
Yes.
Put on quality programming for you all.
That's right, and we are at it, honey. That's,
Indeed.
that is,
Indeed, Mom.
it's gonna beep and then we're finished.
Look at that. See now, look at that. It cooked down to almost nothing. So the oven comes off. The fish is going to come out here. Here we go. So let's get a look at what this looks like. Let's move the chart up there. Yeah. And let's actually move the greens over here before this finish cooking. And look at this. I mean, cooked salmon in 15 minutes. Now, cooked salmon turns from a sort of dark pink color to a light pink color. And, you know, just with any other protein, it will not stop cooking when you take it out of the oven. The residual heat in there will finish cooking it. So what you have to do with all proteins, you have to rest for 5 to 10 minutes. We're not going to let it rest that long because we don't need this episode to drag on until tomorrow morning. But we do just want it to sort of rest and cool just a little bit as the greens finish cooking here. And as you can see, one of the reasons that I did include the tofu and the salmon on the same plate is because I knew with that thick marinade and with the very little bit of olive oil that we put on the salmon, the two proteins weren't going to mix at all. So for those of you food conscious viewers out there, I did want you to know that was something that we considered when we were sort of doing it. So we're going to let that rest for a little bit.
And then I'm gonna put this
We're going
on.
to put that on. So the salmon's done, the tofu's done, the polenta's done, the
the
greens are
dressing
done,
done.
the aioli's done.
We're ready to eat.
We are done.
Oh, my
Almost.
goodness. Yeah.
So before we start plating up here, anybody else from home have any last questions before we put this whole thing together?
This
When
is
can
a
we come
very
over for
silent-
dinner?
Huh?
When can we come over for dinner?
Well, we've eaten this 3 times in the last like 2 weeks. If you want to come over
That's right.
here to Old Town, you can probably take the salmon home with you. I don't need to eat it again.
That's right,
Well, let's
that's
not.
right.
Well, let's not.
Well, we're gonna do a tofu
Oh, we are.
and we're gonna do a salmon.
Oh, okay. How
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're going to see how we're going to do this. Not a lot of space, but we're going to try to figure
That's
it out.
right. We are.
So here we go. So let's start. Let's start with get the tongs. Let's do that.
Okay.
Let's start with the polenta. We want to get an overhead camera shot. So you start with the bed of the creamy polenta. And then we're going to come in with a
We're gonna do this.
yeah, here we go. Then we're going to come in with a ladle full of these gorgeous bright greens, garlicky greens. And you will get some of the braising juices from those greens into the polenta too, so it'll have a lot of good flavor.
We've got
Then we're
one
gonna do a piece of tofu.
piece of tofu, beautiful tofu. Look at the colors of this. It is just gorgeous. You
Indeed.
got that golden color, all of these gorgeous colors from the rainbow chard, and then the tofu with the dressing that Michael made on top of there. And
Indeed.
then we need to add the two sauces. So I'm gonna add the lemon aioli, and Michael will add the dressing that he made. And don't be afraid to put some of this on top of the greens as well.
It really does carry through to the bottom of the dish and sort of lightens up all of those creamy, that creamy fatty polenta and the really garlicky greens and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So there you have it, everybody.
there you have it.
Baked salmon with lemon aioli, baked tofu with a lemony mustardy marinade on a bed of creamy polenta and garlicky greens. We want to thank you all for tuning in with us again. Thanks for checking out. If this is your first episode of the Choice City Cucina, welcome to the show. If it's your second episode of the Choice City Cucina, thank you for coming back. We're going to be back with a third episode of the Choice City Cucina. Come in here, Dad. And this one is going to be done. So we got the whole family here. The whole family here.
And guess which one doesn't cook in this group?
Indeed. Indeed. So the third episode is going to be right before Father's Day. We're going to make it for all the dads out there. We're either going to do, for the carnivores out there, we're going to do a skirt steak, cheese steak with a caramelized red onion and tomato relish. And for the non-carnivore eating dads out there, we're going to do a portobello mushroom cheesesteak with mushroom au jus. So stick around, join us again. I want to thank my mom for joining me. Happy
thank you,
70th
sweetheart.
birthday, Mom.
Thank you,
I want
sweetheart.
to thank my dad in advance for joining me in 5 short weeks. I want to thank my wife for sort of working the cameras back behind there.
Yeah.
And for all of you wonderful co-op shoppers and believers in local food and the whole local food movement, thank you for supporting the co-op, for supporting local eateries and just vendors and everything else like that. It's so incredibly important. And please continue to shop. So thanks again. We love you, and we'll see you next time on
Thanks,
Choice
everybody.
City Cucina.
Bye.
Thanks, and see you again.
Bye.
All right, so that was the sign off of the show.